Guys, my last video did really well, and I used all that momentum from YouTube to get a new job as the Pope. And with my new job title, I took up some new responsibilities. Responsibilities such as helping to lower the homeless population, helping the local community with free veterinary work, and last but not least, of course, killing God. Please join me on my journey to overtake Pope Leo and restore order to this world. Also, those of you out there with a very keen eye might notice that this is not a satisfactory video. Part 3 of the sushi series is still coming out. I just wanted to make this video in the meantime while I'm working on it. That way you guys have something to watch, because I know that you all wake up in the morning and just hope that I uploaded something. So I hope that you still enjoy this, even though it isn't a factory game. And like I said, part 3 will be coming out shortly, but it is taking quite a bit of time. With that being said though, you of course start the game out with the P38 Dirk. And while it's reliable, and honestly I think it's fun to use, it's nothing special, or at least it isn't yet. As the video goes on, I'm going to be trying to add as many mods as I can to it and just make it really unique and honestly overpowered if I'm able to obtain that. If you haven't played Sulfur yet, this is the first biome that you start the game in, and it's called the Caves. And it's obviously the easiest one, and by a pretty large margin. I would argue that even once you get into the town, which is the second biome, the game gets significantly harder. But with that being said, we can put on our balaclava and commit some atrocities with this pistol in the Goblin Cave. I've found generally that it's best not to discriminate when it comes to shooting people in the Goblin Cave. If it moves, then it should probably die. And this aftermarket suppressor is going to help us do that by boosting the crit rate and also making it silent. I actually don't think your gun being silent really affects too much in this game, other than the sound obviously, but I don't think the enemies react differently to it. You can see here that some enemies have different modifiers on them, which will later on make them a lot more dangerous, but for now they all just kind of light each other on fire and kill themselves, so that works out pretty well in our favor. I don't quite know what category of game to put Sulfur in. It's really unique. I like the art style a lot, and obviously it's like an extraction shooter, but past that, I don't know if I would really consider it a roguelike. I know that some people have, but it's very unique. You can see this is the first kind of like mini boss fight of the entire game in the Goblin Caves. This fight's super easy. He always has the modifier that makes him split into 3 other enemies, and so long as you're able to jump up and down and dodge his little shockwave ability that he has, this fight usually isn't too difficult. There have been a couple times where I've been cornered by all 3 of them at the same time and they've killed me, but unless that happens to you, then you should be alright in this fight. With my new job as Pope, it is my sole responsibility to make sure that I personally execute all of non-believers as Pope does. And these people are just simply one of the very many that must die. I do feel like it's my personal responsibility to warn everybody. If you're thinking about playing this game, be warned, because it did have me in kind of a death grasp the whole time that I was recording, and I stayed up way too late a lot of days playing this. Anyways, though, with that warning that you all will inevitably ignore anyways, this is the first boss fight. His name's Cousin, and he's absolutely disgusting, as you can see. He's covered in a substance that he refers to as mud. We all know what it really is, though. Anyways, even with the starting pistol and just a basic aftermarket suppressor on it, this boss fight really isn't too difficult, so long as you just walk in a circle. Most of his little mud balls will miss you, and you can finish him off pretty quickly after he summons in his ads. But with the first biome and boss fight out of the way, I just wanted to take a second and thank everybody for blowing up my channel as much as it has. I'm currently, at the time of recording this, at 995 subscribers, and I always hoped that I would eventually hit 1,000 subscribers, but I didn't think that it would happen this quickly. But it really does look like you guys are going to make it happen, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. And I will, of course, be putting my Patreon supporters at the end of the video, because I appreciate you guys more than anything. You guys really helped me to keep doing this as a job, and I can't put into words how much that means to me. I never thought I'd be at a point where people would enjoy my content that much, but I really do appreciate it. With that out of the way though, you can see that I finally made it into town, which is the second biome. And if you guys have ever visited a gas station in a sketchy part of town late at night, that's exactly what town is like. You got dogs trying to rip your testicles off, people are trying to beat your face in with a baseball bat, and of course the iconic sniper trying to blow your brains out from across the parking lot. And you can see that was just a little bit too much for my Pope duties today. And unfortunately, with us dying in town, the gas station tweakers did get a hold of my modded out P38 Dirk, which means that we're going to have to completely start from scratch. And this is what I came up with. This gun is an absolute monster. Instead of the 9mm that the 38 Dirk normally shoots, I put shotgun shells in it with a reflex sight, a suppressor of course. It's got a laser sight on it, and I put a switch in it to make it fully automatic. I don't remember the exact oils that I was running on this, but I did know that at least at some point I put the Crusader oil on it, meaning that each hit that I get on an enemy does more damage than the last one. And you can see that with this build, I absolutely annihilated Cousin, and he didn't even stand a chance, to be honest. This felt a little cruel. This punishment was so bad it feels like even Jeff Bezos might hesitate to use it against Amazon employees using the restroom. With that being said, Cousin did not survive very long, and honestly I'm really proud of this build that I was able to put together. Also, I just want to go on record and say that I was joking about the Jeff Bezos joke. Obviously, Amazon employees caught using the bathroom deserve far worse than the beatdown that Cousin just got there. Now, you'll notice that I am in fact not in town, because I forgot to record the town part. It went so quick using this build. And I also forgot to record sewers, unfortunately. So right now we're in the dungeon. And the dungeon is a huge turning point for Sulfur because it's where the difficulty kind of ramps up out of nowhere. I died quite a few times in the dungeon, but with this new pistol build, by just mag dumping shotgun shells into any living being, I was eventually able to make it out of the dungeon. This is my favorite NPC. Whenever I see him, I feel like I'm on my 600-pound life because I just go in and buy every single morsel of food that he has and shove it all into my backpack. It's a winning strategy for this game for anybody that has played it. And actually, now that I think about it, the Sulfur main character doesn't wear a backpack, so I'll leave it up to your guys' imagination where he keeps all of these various items that he has on him at all times. But I'm sure you can see the dungeon is not a very safe or inviting area. Every time I walk into the dungeon, I feel like there's at least a 60% chance that I don't make it out. And weirdly, I know that I referred to this enemy as God in the intro. The quote-unquote final boss for the dungeon area is actually weirdly easy, I feel, especially compared to the difficulty of the entire area. You would think that it would lead up to like a really epic boss fight, but this guy always goes down pretty easily in my experience. This was actually my first time fighting him in this recording, and I didn't even realize that he was already dead because I didn't expect him to die that quickly. However, this ghost did almost capture my soul to punish me for killing the boss that quickly. But with that out of the way, we can move on to the next area, which is Castle. Now, if any of you have ever played Fallout 4, Castle might uproot some deep-seated trauma in you. The amount of mines that you'll encounter in this area is absolutely horrendous. And I've never actually personally died to a mine, but it's been really close. And these little like mine layer enemies, they have so much health that sometimes it's not even worth killing them, it feels like. So they'll just kind of wander around the area and fill up the entire space with landmines, hoping that you step on it. And you can see that the difficulty is really ramping up because the boss that was just in the last area is now just an enemy that will appear in Castle. And I know that I was talking about how easy of a boss fight he is, but when he is just a randomly occurring enemy, it makes it quite a bit more dangerous than he is as a boss fight, of course. And if that wasn't enough to deter you from this area, then these people with rail cannons are also shooting at you the whole time. And honestly, this whole area is just awful. I try to escape it as quickly as possible. Sometimes I don't even kill the enemies and I just kind of run away because it's not worth fighting all the enemies in this area. Just generally, you want to try to escape as quickly as possible. It is, however, pretty fun to blow up the mine layers with their own mines. Usually this is a little bit hard to do because they travel backwards away from the mines, obviously, but if you get a couple in a room, it's not that difficult to get them to go over their own mines and obviously kill them with them. Another thing that makes Castle a little bit more difficult, at least your first time through, is that you can't save. If you've completed dungeon, you have to also complete Castle in order to save. So you're usually, at least the first time going in this with your guns, more damage, and you're probably struggling on food as well. You can see though, I did make it through the gauntlet of dungeon and Castle, all the way to the final boss of Castle. I am pretty sure that this actually used to be the final boss of the whole game, back before it was fully released. But now there's quite a few bosses after her that you have to fight. I think this fight's pretty interesting. It's really scary when she summons in all these assassin enemies because they're probably the most dangerous ones, other than maybe like the railgun guys from Castle. But once you take care of them, I haven't noticed her spawning them twice. I think it's just something that she does once. The ghosts really aren't that big a deal. You can kind of just strafe them and they'll leave you alone. And in general, she doesn't seem to have too much health. Now that partly might be because my gun does an incredible amount of damage. But this part of the fight did have me struggling a little bit. I didn't realize that you have to shoot her little red eyeball, and obviously if you don't do that, she'll light you on fire. Thankfully, I had a water bottle to save me from the fire there, but if not, then fire can actually do quite a bit of damage to you. But you can see, of course, even with the starting gun, she really wasn't that difficult to take down, and I'm glad that she's not the final boss anymore. It would have been a little bit anticlimactic. She is probably the first boss that actually requires some real effort though, like the first fight that you actually really have to pay attention to. The other ones you can kind of just blindly shoot at them and they'll usually die. The dungeon in general is probably where you really need to lock in if you don't want to lose all your stuff. And it's also one of the areas that I start using insurance on all my guns when I go in there, because there's a good chance, even if you're decent at the game, you could end up dead. Here you can see Ralphie can repair all of your items for you because they do have durability in this game, and even your armor will break if you wear it for too long. Even if it breaks though, you can still use it, you just gotta get it repaired. After dungeon though is one of the more interesting areas, I feel like, which is the forest. And here the homeless have domesticated and trained the crows to dive bomb you and try to steal your wallet directly out of your pants, so you have to be a little bit more cautious here. When you consider the difficulty of the entire biome though, I actually think forest is more laid back and easier than the dungeon is. I die in the dungeon way more often than I die in forest, and I don't know if that's just a personal problem or if most people feel like that. I will say though, no matter how many times I play through the forest, these birds jumping out of the trees scare me every single time, especially since they seem to be made out of Kevlar or something. I swear these crows, like specifically these ones, you can mag dump into them all day and they have a ridiculous amount of health. You'll also encounter these bigger crows, which you can see me fight right now, and you'd think that these are a little bit more dangerous, considering that they're bigger and scarier looking, but I'm actually way more scared of the other ones that just seem to be able to face tank shotgun shells all day. After calling the homeless's domesticated crows though, you can pick up the classic hot dogs made out of people and then immediately be punished by the souls of the damned for doing so. But with that being said, that's kind of all that Forest has to offer other than the final boss. Now, I've seen some people really struggle with this boss, and honestly, I've only fought him one time, so maybe I just got really lucky here, and maybe my gun just does a lot of damage, but I completely annihilated him in this boss fight. I think it is just because my damage was so high, and his moveset isn't anything, like, extremely hard to dodge. It's a little bit annoying when he summons in this many crows, but if you just kill him quickly like I did, then the crows don't ever really have a chance to build up, like, any significant amount and really be a real problem. And this move especially is just kind of free damage because he stands still and you can see where all the projectiles are landing on the ground. Especially since you get to fuel up with so many hot dogs right before the fight. I feel like so long as, like I said, your gun does do some alright damage, you really shouldn't struggle with Terrabon too much. But like I said, that could also totally just be from me getting super lucky this first time that I fought him. But now that we have beaten Terrabon, we can move on to my least favorite area in the entire game. It's just this fortress that are full of these frog people, and as you make your way through, they're just constantly ambushing you and exposing themselves to you, and honestly, nothing here is fun. The little baby frogs aren't that bad, but the ones that throw grenades at you and move around super sporadically are always difficult for me to kill. And then you of course also have the locals trying to expose themselves to you. Walking through this area is honestly the equivalent of if your parents left you at like the creepy uncle's house overnight. It's really dangerous, and all you're trying to do is leave and keep your virginity intact. There's not that many different types of enemies in this area, but this enemy in particular that just kind of like covers themselves with the robe seems to really take a lot of shots to kill. And they've also, all the enemies here hit pretty hard, so it's easy to die if you're not paying attention or if you run low on food. Once you finish the above ground part of this area, you kind of go into their little frog cave. I can't imagine what kinds of horrendous crimes have taken place down in this freaky little frog cave that they have, but it did wield me probably my favorite gun in the entire game. I don't think this gun is actually that good, but it's really fun to use, and it's also very effective at just mowing down frogs with, so I think it was meant to be. But anyways, once you make it through the little cave, then you come out the other side and you get to fight their emperor. And that boss fight is honestly pretty fun. I didn't struggle with this area too much, but the entire time I was here, I was just generally uncomfortable and wanted to leave as soon as I could. Now we're at their temple though, which is where you fight the final boss of this area, and I actually had a lot of fun with this boss fight. This is one of the fights that you saw in the very intro to the video, and like I said, I had a lot of fun with it. Considering how late in the game this fight is, I expected it to be a lot more difficult than it really was. And it's not my favorite boss fight, but honestly, this is probably my second favorite fight of the whole game. Like I said, it's just really interesting, and this is also the first two-phase fight, I believe. I wouldn't really consider any fight before this to have multiple phases, even though I guess their movesets do move a little bit. You can see I was pretty confused the first time I was fighting this because I didn't look up a guide or anything for any of these fights. So I didn't realize that you have to shoot the very tail of the very end of his tail instead of his face, because for most of the game, shooting people in the face is a pretty effective strategy. But all you do is shoot his tail, which is exposed, and he'll get shorter, kind of like if you ever fought Eater Worlds in Terraria. This fight's kind of similar to that, weirdly enough. Each little bit of his tail doesn't have that much health either, so as you break them off, they'll kind of drop down to the floor and leave, I think it's oil, but they'll leave little puddles of oil on the ground. I don't know if you can interact with this. I tried to shoot it and it doesn't like light on fire or anything, but maybe if you hit the oil with a Molotov or something, it'll light on fire. That would be cool to, like, if somebody in the comments knows if that happens, that'd be cool to see. I'm also assuming that if one of his little tail pieces drops onto you, it damages you, but that's, like I said, that's just an assumption because I got through this fight pretty quickly and I never had that happen to me personally. But once again, if you know more than me in the comments, that'd be cool to hear about. This is also a fight that I'm really glad did end up having 2 phases as opposed to just the first one, obviously, because I honestly, towards the end of the boss fight, I was thinking about how easy this first phase was and how it was a little bit anticlimactic, kind of like in the dungeon. It felt like the whole area was really hard, and then you get to the dungeon final boss and it's just kind of, like I said, underwhelming. But you can see he takes his little robot worm and slams himself through the temple floor. I'm sure his followers supported this move by completely annihilating like their holy grounds or whatever this place is. But when you jump into the ground, you can see that he readies himself into a giant like war mech and chases you through the tunnel. One thing this game does do is sometimes if the bosses aren't quite ready, they're like invincible until they get prepared, and I never like it when games do that. It just feels a little unfair, but I don't think it ruins the experience or anything. That's honestly just me nitpicking. Everything about this game is really good. Even though this is his second phase though, I really wouldn't consider it too much harder than the first phase. So long as you pay attention and you're able to dodge the missiles, and so long as you don't have a build that's like super slow, then I don't think this is too difficult. I don't know what happens if you get really close to him. Like, I'm not sure if he starts doing melee attacks or if he just shoots more missiles at you. But I killed him pretty quick with the shotgun jerk build that I put together. And I think, honestly, especially considering how cinematic the second phase was, this whole fight was just really fun. Like I said earlier in the video, I wasn't the biggest fan of the area itself, but considering how good the boss fight was, that kind of pulls it all together for me and makes the area in general just rank a little bit higher. You might have guessed by now, but the area after this is the final area, and it's also the most difficult. It also happens to be my favorite. I know I kind of am known for just gooning over stuff that's really hard, but the desert is my favorite area, and that's mostly because of the boss fight. The desert itself, honestly, is not that fun to play through. I did enjoy this little Breaking Bad reference though, even if that's not what that was intended to be. In my heart, that's what that is. But the desert, really, I try to take slow because you're just getting sniped at the whole time, and the enemies here are certainly interesting. They do a lot of damage, and thankfully they have no real life counterparts or equivalents. These guys are completely unique, and I don't think the developer took any inspiration from other countries or people. These guys are 100% legally distinct entities, so I don't want to hear any of that in the comment section. But everything considered, I actually think that the desert is a pretty cool area. If you have a crypt key, then you can come into the crypt, obviously, down here, and this drops some of the best items in the game. If you do fail though, there is this slight consequence of being sacrificed to the void. But if you come this far in the game, then that really shouldn't mean too much to you, and you're going to accept this anyways, especially if it means more loot. And generally, I know I've said this quite a bit for this game, but the crypt like little mini event was actually a lot easier than I expected it to be. Maybe like the little frog statue just hyped it up too much, like saying that I'd be sacrificed to the void and everything. But all you have to do is protect these 2 little cubes, and they have quite a bit of health, and none of the enemies here, at least none of the ones that I got, seem to do an incredible amount of damage. So long as you babysit both of the pillars or the cubes pretty well, then you shouldn't struggle too much. The whole event also only lasts like 2 minutes, and the first 30 seconds there's not too many enemies that spawn in. But I think it's totally worth it. I feel like it'd be kind of hard to fail the crypt event. And the items that drop from the crypt are the same ones that drop when you beat the final boss of the game. So assuming that you have a crypt key, I would always do the crypt, so long as you're confident that you're not going to die. The desert also has these really cool enemies that kind of jump up on these fish dudes, and you can shoot them while they're midair. You can't always shoot all 3 of them, at least I'm not always able to do it, but when you are, it feels really rewarding. And they also end up coming into play with the final boss of this area, and I think it's just kind of cool that the final boss of the desert really ties together like the whole biome, and I don't think that many of the other boss fights do that. A lot of other boss fights feel very separate, but the desert boss fight kind of just, he really fits in the desert, I think. Also, obviously, it kind of makes sense considering that this is the final boss fight, but this is by far the hardest fight in the game, at least for me. And I don't think it's really because of any of the moves that he has in particular. I think the main reason that I found it so difficult is because this fight goes on forever. And that's not always a bad thing. I think this fight is really fun. But I do feel like if you were in the unfortunate situation where you had to do this boss fight a couple times in a row, it would probably start to drag on by like the second, third, especially like fourth time that you were doing this fight. But for a first time experience, I had a lot of fun with this fight, and I think it was just the right amount of difficulty. You can see his first phase isn't anything too crazy, it's just a lot like the frog that we fought where he jumps up and down and you just have to aim for him. This fight does spawn in quite a few ads throughout the duration of the fight, which is something that I usually am not a fan of, but I actually think it fits this fight pretty well. But while I'm killing off some of the extra ads, I just want to say that if you've watched this far into the video and you're not subscribed yet, doing so really does mean a lot to me. Like I said, I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers at least somewhat soon, and we're really close. So if we could just finish up that last little bit and get me to 1,000, hopefully I can sometime soon make it into the YouTube partnership program, and that would mean a lot to me. But with that being said, now we're in the second phase of the desert boss fight where he calls the North Pole and calls in missile strikes onto his current location, which is of course right next to us. And this is where the fight kind of starts to pick up. I think it gets a lot more intense. And this is also where I decided this was probably my favorite boss fight of the entire game. The missiles start off pretty slow, and they only hit certain areas, and you can of course see where they're going to land, otherwise it would feel pretty unfair. There's also, I'm not sure if there's always a tornado coming through, like the little arena that you're in, but I had quite a few in the time that I was fighting him. But after all these little missiles start to rain down and hit you, he starts to carpet bomb the entire area with them, and these little drill enemies are attacking you the whole time that he's doing so. So if you're not really paying attention during this part of the fight, you can die pretty easily. I never got hit by the missiles, but I assume that they do quite a bit of damage, considering that, like I said, this is the final fight. And I know that the drill enemies can do a good amount if they hit you. So this whole part of the fight is really dangerous. And I know that it's the point that I had brought up earlier when I was talking about this fight, but it really does go on for a really long time. And it's mostly due to the fact that you can't actually damage the boss for the majority of the fight. Even when he's standing here, he's completely invincible, and you just have to wait for him to like let you do damage to him, or to initiate like a dialogue, and then you can do damage to him. And if I had anything negative to say about this fight, it would definitely be that. But during this part of the fight, you kind of just kill his ads, and the tornado that you're inside of slowly moves towards him as he tries to shoot you with a sniper rifle. But once you're able to actually get to where he's shooting you from, you're able to do damage to him and then finally finish out the fight. I think the most frustrating part about this fight is that the boss itself actually doesn't even have that much health. Like I said, it just goes on for so long because you can't even hurt him for the majority of the fight. And also, while editing this, I just realized that I refer to this as the final fight, and it most definitely is not. This is the second to last final fight. But the final fight is actually included in this video. I don't know why I got it in my brain that this is the last fight in the game. Maybe it's just because it's my favorite. But this is good enough as the final fight. Like, if this did end up being the final fight of the game, I would have been pretty satisfied. Even though it wouldn't really make that much sense lore-wise. Also, if you've watched this far, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. Of course, you liking, subscribing, and even just watching the video will always be enough. But I do show all my Patreon supporters at the end of the video, and also there's a Discord server if you are a certain tier on my Patreon that I'll add you to, and you can be a part of future videos if that's something that you'd be interested in. But with that being said, if you do choose to support my Patreon, I will always appreciate it so much, and if not, that's totally okay too. I just wanted to bring it up. But with that being said, we can finally confront him and actually just finish him off, and you can see once you can actually do damage to him, he dies super quickly. I know I complained a little bit about the fight while I was doing it, about how long it goes on, but I just don't like having the boss on screen and not being able to damage him the whole time. I think it's a really frustrating mechanic to have in a boss fight, but clearly they didn't drag it down too much because this is still my favorite fight in the whole game. You can see here I kind of tried to ambush the final fight. I thought maybe if you like snuck up on the balcony and jumped down on her, you could do some damage to her before the fight actually started, but that's not how it works. The developers thought of everything, I guess. But this fight's pretty good. I think it's probably like third favorite for me. It's very fitting. for it to be the final boss, but I don't think it's anything like spectacular. Like I said, I actually think this is easier than the last boss fight, and it doesn't go on for nearly as long, but the spectacle of it is pretty good, so I'll give it that. And considering that it is a shorter fight, it kind of makes some of the mechanics of the fight a little bit more fun to interact with, because you're not dealing with them for like 10 minutes straight. I will say, I thought that she had a lot more health than she actually does when I was first fighting her, because it seems like my gun isn't doing very much damage here. I don't know if like her defense changes throughout the fight, but it seems like at this point in the fight I really wasn't doing very much damage at all. And then towards the end, it kind of out of nowhere, she just kind of died like really suddenly. So I'm not sure what's up with that. I don't know if I just got a lot of critical hits towards the end and not very many at the beginning, but that is one thing I noticed. Also, I don't know why I was shooting all these with the pistol at the very beginning. Obviously using like an automatic gun is way more effective than what I was doing, but it didn't take me too much longer to figure that out on my own. The crows that she spawns in this stage of the boss fight feels a little weird. They're not very difficult enemies. I feel like it fit more when we were fighting like Treebon, but here they're just kind of annoying and like not in a very significant way. But this part where she's just flying around slowly on her broom and throwing bombs at you, and then also this part where she's just kind of shooting out waves from her feet, are some of the best times to actually deal damage to her, because she kind of just holds still and calms down a little bit. And you can see it looks like my gun is doing a lot more damage here than it was at the beginning of the fight. But this part I kind of struggled with. This is actually when I first realized that there was even a crouch button in this game, and I just kind of did it instinctually, so I'm glad that I did. But I think what you're meant to do is obviously dodge the lasers and shoot at her at the same time, but towards the end I just kind of opted to face tank all of the lasers and just throw grenades and shoot her in the face as much as possible to get it over with, and that seemed to work pretty well. And you can see this is the very end of the fight. Like I said, really not that long, and she kind of just rolls over and dies once she's in this stage. She's not very dangerous, even though this is the scariest looking form of her. And with this boss finally being killed, this also wraps up the lore of the game and kind of gives it like a solid ending. I'm not going to spoil what the ending really is or the lore implications of it. If you want that, you'll either have to look it up or beat the game for yourself. But she does drop 4 of the best items in the game whenever you kill her. Or not 4, 3, I'm blind. But then you drop in the car, and for the first time you actually get to do a driving sequence in this game, which was totally unexpected for me, but I thought it was a cool ending. But you just follow her on the broom in the car that you start the game in, and that is the end of the game. I want to thank everyone that watched this far so much, because I know this video is a lot longer than what I usually make, and I was kind of experimenting with that. Also, I didn't really intend for it to be half an hour long. Sulfur just has a lot of content, and I wanted to include at least most of it. I know that I didn't show off the sewers or really town that much, and like I said, that's just because I didn't have the recording of it, and I think if I did, then this video would have been even longer than it already is, so maybe it's for the best, especially since those areas are somewhat uninteresting. I think the sewers is cool, but town is not really anything too special. But like I said, I want to thank you all for watching this far into the video. Check out my Patreon if you're interested. Of course, that's always optional. Please remember to like and subscribe, and if you really feel like it, leave a comment down below. That always means so much to me. And hopefully I see you next time. Bye.